The president on the road once again yesterday.
I'm here to say to all of you and to say to the people of Nevada and the people of Las Vegas, we can't wait for an increasingly dysfunctional Congress to do its job.
That's why the president outlined programs yesterday on mortgage relief. And the House is back in session this week and is going to be doing some voting, among other things. They'll be talking about the repeal of a 3% tax on companies contracting with the government. To discuss what is ahead this week in the House, we welcome to the program Representative John Yarmuth, who represents the 3rd Congressional District in Kentucky. Congressman, thanks for being here this morning.
Good to be with you, Tim.
My understanding is there are a couple of things that are going to be going through for votes this week. First of all, the repeal of that 3% tax. That sounds like something that both Democrats and Republicans are behind. Is that correct?
That's my impression too. I certainly support it. We get these parades of different business groups coming through the offices over the years, and a wide range of business groups have mentioned that as one of their top priorities. It is an impediment. Most of them don't deal with very big margins on their work, and when they're dealing with the government, and to have 3% withheld is a real problem for them, and it affects their cash flow. So, I don't imagine that anybody will oppose that.
All right. So was this one part of the American Jobs Act?
This was a one very small item, right? It's been on the table for quite a while, but as are many of the provisions of the Jobs Act. There's things that Republicans have proposed in many cases. So, this will be you could characterize this as a small victory for the Jobs Act.
Is there anything else in that American Jobs Act that could get this, if not this level of bipartisanship, at least enough to get it passed?
Probably nothing major. I would hope that things like the payroll tax holiday would be able to garner bipartisan support, particularly because if it doesn't pass, then people are going to find their paychecks reduced, or take-home pay reduced as of the end of this year, because we're already on a 2% the payroll tax holiday, and that'll disappear. So I think there are probably a few other pieces. I think the 100% depreciation of investment is also something that'll generate a lot of bipartisan support.
The House also, I guess, is going to vote on something called the development of copper resources. That doesn't sound like a major piece of legislation, but is that something that also likely will get through the House?
Oh, well, it'll get through the House, I'm sure. That's not one that'll be that won't be bipartisan, though. I think there's going to be considerable amount of opposition to it from environmental reasons.
Once again, we're speaking with Congressman John Yarmuth from Kentucky. Now, you have presented something called the Fix American Schools Today, the FAST Act, and the modernization of schools was a part of the American Jobs Act that the president proposed. Is what you're calling for separate from that, or something that you would see as an adjunct to the American Jobs Act?
Well, it's an adjunct. It's an analogous proposal. It differs in some of the details, but again, we've got a lot of schools out there that need repairs, and a lot of schools also that could benefit from energy efficiency renovations. Things that we have some schools in Kentucky right now under a program the University of Louisville is administering that are saving $10 per student per year on utilities, and when you a little more than that. In Jefferson County, we have 100,000 students in the school system. That kind of savings can amount to as much as $3 million a year for the school system. And those are savings that go on for, not forever, but for a very long time. And so that's what this legislation is designed to promote, these things that, while they will put people to work right away, and we'll make some important investments. These are things that pay back year after year after year, and we need to be doing a lot of that. There's a lot of money to be saved over time in the energy sector.
Congressman Yarmuth, you're on the Budget Committee. Your ranking member on that committee is Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, who also happens to be on the Joint Select Committee for Deficit Reduction. Have you communicated at all with him about progress there? Is there any sense of where that is moving? And are you preparing yourself for votes that are going to be coming up probably within about a month or so on whatever the committee comes up with?
Well, I hope we get to vote on something, but I'm not overly optimistic. I haven't been since the debt ceiling vote created the super committee. All I can do, Chris and the other members of the super committee are being very tight-lipped. They're not giving out any details. But I will say that one of the things that I learned before we broke for a week last week was that they really hadn't moved any closer together on any significant issue. They were still kind of, my impression was taking inventory. And by that I mean seeing what there was out there that could be cut and what possible sources of revenue might exist. But they hadn't actually done any negotiations on those. They were trying to still get the lay of the land. And that doesn't bode well, in my opinion, for getting something done over the next, basically over the next 10 days. They have to come up with something that can get a score from the Congressional Budget Office, and that takes a while. So while there is a November 23rd deadline, it's really a deadline shorter than that because they have to figure out what the savings actually are.
Have you had a chance yet to look at some of the things that the president proposed yesterday for mortgage assistance?
Yes, I've looked at them, and I love the idea of allowing homeowners to refinance at lower rates. I've actually mentioned that to the White House over the last couple of months. This, to me, makes ultimate sense. There are a lot of people in the country who, with good banking relationships, who have no problem refinancing their mortgage down to about a 4% rate, and there's no reason why we shouldn't make that same rate available to virtually any homeowner who's responsible enough to pay their mortgages but can't get refinanced. Remember, we're lending money to these banks at 0%. So it's not a hardship on them to ask them to refinance these mortgages to 4 from 6 or whatever they may be. This is something that wouldn't cost them. Yeah, it costs them a little additional interest, but again, they've never been able to borrow the money that they're lending on these mortgages for a lower amount. So I think they should be required to pitch in, and again, with the FHA, with Fannie and Freddie backing all these mortgages, there's really no risk to the taxpayer. But this could put as much as $200 a month back into the pockets of taxpayers, help them stay in their homes, put more disposable income into the economy. I don't know where there's a loser in that proposition.